creating problems that don't exist, of reading malice into innocent situations, of being unable to just let things be. But if you stay silent, if you swallow what you see and pretend not to notice, you begin to lose contact with yourself. Because every time you ignore your own perception, every time you accept someone else's version of reality when you know it's false, you're essentially telling yourself that your experience cannot be trusted. And over time, this creates a kind of split in your being. Part of you knows the truth, but another part must pretend not to know it. This is madness of a very quiet sort. I remember years ago sitting in a meeting where everyone was congratulating themselves on how well a particular project was going. And I could see clear as day that the whole thing was about to collapse. The signs were everywhere. The forced enthusiasm, the avoidance of certain topics, the way people's eyes would slide away when difficult questions arose. But when I gently suggested that perhaps we should examine some concerning patterns, I was met with hostility. Not argument, mind you, not reasoned disagreement, pure defensive hostility. And this brings us to the third danger, the most insidious one. When you see clearly and others don't want to see, they will often turn their anger on you. Not consciously, perhaps. They won't sit down and decide to make you the villain. But unconsciously, automatically, they will begin to treat you as the problem, as if your perception is creating the very difficulties you're merely observing. This is what I call the phenomenon of shooting the messenger. When someone points out that the emperor has no clothes, the crowd doesn't thank them for the truth. The crowd turns on them for disturbing the comfortable fiction everyone was enjoying. Your clarity becomes a threat, and threats must be eliminated or controlled. I've watched this pattern repeat itself countless times. The person who sees clearly gets labeled. They're too negative. They're creating drama. They're unstable. They need to lighten up. They're paranoid. Notice how all these labels have one thing in common. They all suggest that the problem lies in the perceiver, not in what's being perceived. It's a brilliant defensive maneuver, really. If we can convince you that your perception is flawed, we never have to look at what you're perceiving. But here's what nobody tells you. The fourth danger is perhaps the most devastating of all. When you're constantly absorbing the emotional states and hidden truths of everyone around you, when you're perpetually picking up on what's unspoken and unfelt, you begin to lose track of what actually belongs to you. Your own feelings become mixed up with everyone else's. You walk into a room feeling perfectly fine and leave feeling inexplicably anxious or sad or angry. And you have no idea if these feelings are yours or if you've simply absorbed them from the environment like a sponge soaking up water. This is exhausting beyond measure. Imagine never quite knowing which thoughts are your own, never being certain whether the emotion you're feeling belongs to you or to the person sitting next to you. It's like trying to hear your own voice in a room full of people all talking at once. Eventually, you might forget what your voice even sounds like. I've spoken with people who describe this experience, and they often say the same thing. I feel like I'm disappearing, like there's less and less of me and more of everyone else. And this isn't poetry. This is a real psychological danger. When the boundaries between self and other become too permeable, when you're taking in too much without adequate protection, you can actually lose contact with your own center, your own identity. Now you might be thinking, well, this all sounds rather grim. Is there no hope for those who see clearly? And here's where we come to something interesting. Because the danger I'm describing is only dangerous when it's unconscious, when you don't understand what's happening to you, when you think you're going mad or that something is wrong with you. But once you understand the game, once you see that your clarity is not a flaw but a particular kind of awareness, everything changes. Not because the seeing stops, but because your relationship to it transforms. You begin to realize that you're not required to save everyone.